the team follows him. Pressure mounts as police try desperately to get a positive ID. The risk of a repeat attack is all too real.
These are dynamic and very fast-moving operations. The circumstances do change very quickly, and decisions have to be made very quickly as well.
After following him for half an hour, the man made the decision the police feared most.
He went into a tube station. Of all things, he went into a tube station, and for them it was a time they decided that they had to act.
It was just after 10 o'clock this morning. Plainclothes officers had chased a suspected bomber down onto a platform and into a train, where they shot him dead.
The information I have available is that this shooting is directly linked to the ongoing and expanding anti-terrorist operation.
And of course it came from as high as you can go in the Metropolitan Police, from the Commissioner, Sir Ian Blair, that this was a man linked to the investigation. That started to flavour the reporting quite naturally.
They say he was seen emerging this morning from a house here at Stockwell, a house that had been under observation as part of the investigation into the London bombings.
I had mixed feelings about that, actually, because immediately I saw that, I was like, yes, good, they've got him, yeah. But when I saw the picture, I realized maybe it wasn't him.
She was right. It wasn't one of the bombers. It was Jean Charles de Menezes, a Brazilian electrician. Police had shot an innocent man.
I got the phone call from Scotland Yard, from Ian Blair's office, to say, you know, that there has been a problem here. This isn't one of the bombers. It's been a tragic mistake. And that was profoundly depressing, because this really is another victim. I mean, just like the 52 who died in the first wave of bombings.
I think everyone who was involved in that investigation was devastated. The outcome was the antithesis of what we were trying to achieve, which was to secure the safety of the public.
But there could be no let-up for the police. The next day, a fifth bomb was discovered in a popular park in West London.
Here was a different dimension. Here was a fifth person, and then there was the question, why had it been discarded? Who was the individual carrying it? Why there? What was the significance of the location?
The hunt was on now for a fifth terrorist on the run, adding to an already complex case. Events were beginning to take their toll on jittery Londoners.
People became very nervous about travelling on the tube. I remember going on the tube myself and seeing people looking at other passengers, and if they felt unnerved about them, you know, they'd move carriages.
But the painstaking work began to produce results. A trawl through hours of CCTV footage had thrown up these 4 images.
It's time for the public to do what they're very good at, which is support investigations.
Those images prompted a huge response from people across the nation.
The CCTV was vital. There's absolutely no doubt it had a pivotal role to play. Our hotline, which will usually take maybe 200 to 300 calls a month, took 25,000 calls in July alone.
The police and security services needed a breakthrough, and quickly. It would come from an ordinary member of the public in this North London block of flats.
A caretaker was searching some dustbins that he knew he'd recently emptied and discovered bin bags full of very strange bottles and chemicals. It triggered in his mind the photographs that he'd seen, the CCTV footage that he'd seen on the television, all the events that everybody in London was aware of, and he called the police.
The caretaker didn't know what was in the bottles, but he realised he knew the bombers and he knew the flats they lived in.
Curtis House came a couple of days into the operation, where effectively we found the bomb factory.
The Curtis house was crucial. They found the ingredients, they found the packaging, they found jihadi manuals, grim, grisly pictures of executions.
But the most significant find was the massive amount of hydrogen peroxide, a key ingredient in homemade explosives, far more than would be needed for just 5 bombs.
I think the biggest thing for us was the quantity of explosives that they'd manufactured. We were dealing with people that had attempted to kill themselves and the people around them, and therefore that mindset was still there, and if they had further explosive devices, then the community was still at risk.
The man who rented this flat was Yassin Hassan Omar. Omar grew up in war-torn Somalia, but moved to Britain when he was 11. He is the Warren Street bomber. Identifying Omar was in many ways the easy bit. Finding and capturing him, well, that was an entirely different matter. But once again, it was a member of the public who gave the police the crucial information they needed. That call came from Birmingham, to where Omar had fled. A resident in the Small Heath area phoned the police to tell them a man acting suspiciously was hiding in this ground floor flat. Police watched the flat for 2 days to confirm their suspect's identity. Then the West Midlands Specialist Firearms Unit was sent in. None of that team has ever revealed their remarkable story before.
Obviously, with regards to this specific job, we were told who we were going for and we were clearly aware of what he's done, and it doesn't really take a rocket scientist to work out from there the risks involved.
I wanted to get it right. I knew the seriousness of the situation. We all had to do what we were trained for and get it right, and get it right quickly.
In the front of these firearms officers' minds was what had happened in Madrid. The year before, Islamist bombers had killed almost 200 people on the Spanish capital's train network. Some of the terrorists were tracked down to an apartment. But instead of surrendering, they blew themselves up in an attempt to kill as many police as possible. In Birmingham, under cover of darkness, officers moved into position.
There wasn't much talk. Everybody knew what they had to do.
Well, the adrenaline obviously begins to kick in at that stage, and your anxiety levels begin to rise slightly.
Police! There you are! As dawn broke, they entered the flat and had to search and secure each room. Carl was the last to enter and noticed the bathroom door was a few inches ajar.
I open the door, and at that point I see a man standing in the bath with his back towards me, with a rucksack on. I immediately begin to shout at him to keep his hands in the air where I can see them.
Keep your hands up! Stay exactly where you
Keep
are.
your
hands up!
I realised that other officers were shouting. They were in the bathroom shouting at somebody. So I went in just to check, and obviously I saw the man in the bathroom.
At which point he begins to lower his right hand, and at that stage I form the opinion I'm going to have to shoot him. But clearly I can't shoot him through a rucksack, because I think there's a bomb in there.
Threatened with losing their own lives, but desperate to take their man alive, the officers are in a seemingly impossible situation.
At that point I realised it was very, very serious, and actually it was like everything slowed down, and I just thought, oh my God.
There's a split second when I enter the room that I think I'm going to die here.
After 6 days on the run, the police have tracked down the first of the 21-7 bombers.
Police! There you are!
They find him standing in the bath, wearing a rucksack.
I vividly remember him staring over his shoulder at me. His eyes were wide.
I could see the back of him, was slightly side on, but I definitely could see both of his hands. That was a key feature of my decision-making at that time.
After the tragedy of Stockwell, they don't want another death, but their own lives depend on the next 10 seconds.
The decision, albeit it's nothing that has been discussed already, it's made to go hands-on with him, grab him and control his hands. We force him down into the bath so he's on top of the rucksack. But then he's desperately trying to get his hands to his chest. And I've given thought of, can I control his hand and produce my handgun?
I deployed the taser into the upper part of his body, away from the rucksack. That immobilizes him, and managed to, I don't know how it happened, his hands were handcuffed.
Well, we removed the rucksack because that's our major concern, really. We don't know what's in it. I remember vividly saying, get rid of this, and just handing it out to my right, and there's a pair of hands there waiting for it. No questions, no hesitations. That rucksack is just taken from my hands.
And one officer grabbed the bag, ran out the back door of the house, down to the end of the garden, in order to protect the rest of us.
And he's put it in a position where it's at its furthest point away from any houses and any people, which is an awesome job, really, when you think about it.
Yassin Omar, the man who tried to blow up Warren Street, is the first of the 21/7 bombers to be captured.
There is clearly a thought that he may have been trying to achieve what we call suicide by cop, in taking up that attitude, that stance in the bath with the rucksack. He was seeking to use that as a means of not going into the custodial system, but rather leaving this earth.
We won't know if Omar was trying to die or not. The rucksack had no bomb, but those officers arrested him, believing they could be blown apart.
Once the job's done, get back on the van, as we do with every job, with every operation, and just drive back to our base. I vividly remember sitting opposite the guy who came in the room with me, and he just looks at me and says, I really think we should write a will. And then it sort of hits you like a brick wall what's just happened.
It's quite levelling, like. I don't talk much about what I do at home, but obviously my partner realised what happened, and she wasn't best impressed by what I'd done.
Just 6 days into Britain's biggest manhunt in 25 years, the police have their first major success.
That was obviously a key moment. It built that sense that the momentum was swinging our way. And having had those thoughts, again, it was a sense of, right, one down, now let's get the rest.
4 terrorists were still at large. The pressure to track them down before they could strike again was enormous.
I thought all they've got to do is regroup. They'll be like frightened rabbits, but at the same point they want to see it through. They'll feel as if they've been defeated.
The police were pouring resources into tracking them down.
It was on a scale that people had never experienced. The scenes for 7/7 and then latterly 21/7 stretched all the way around the whole circumference of New Scotland Yard on 2 floors. It was an unprecedented scale, of which I don't think anyone, well, no one had seen before, and fingers crossed no one will see again in the future.
There were now 1,200 detectives across the 2 investigations, 400 officers on security patrols, teams of armed officers following up the best leads across the country.
We effectively went from one job to another. We were working on the intelligence, and we were looking at different locations, different premises.
Everywhere there was evidence of the police hunt. You couldn't turn a corner in London, and you certainly couldn't go anywhere near public transport without realising there are armed police absolutely everywhere.
The pressure soon bore further results. A man walked into Finchley Police Station offering information, but detectives soon twigged why he knew so much. He was in fact the 5th bomber they were hunting. He was Manfo Asiedu, a Ghanaian, who had abandoned his bomb in the West London park. Another of the gang is in custody.